Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Lower Providence Township Board of Supervisors for Thursday, April 16th, 2015. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Deb, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Mr. Sergini.
Here.
Mr. Duffy.
Here.
Ms. Ekman. Here. Mr. Thomas.
Here.
And Ms. Zimmerman.
Here.
Thank you very much. Prior to the meeting, an executive session was held to discuss legal, personnel, and real estate matters. Item 1 on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of minutes of the various boards and commissions in the township that have been submitted for the month, monthly reports from our staff, as well as fiscal matters, including payment of bills. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business. Item 2A, adoption of an ordinance to authorize issuance of non-electoral debt and award a qualified interest rate management agreement for non-electoral debt in the amount of $140,000. Jerry Golis and Lucian Calhoun are on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, the township does propose to incur $140,000 of non-electoral debt, and that is to fund the Ford F-550 dump truck and the wood chipper that the board authorized at a previous Board of Supervisors meeting. Mr. Lucian Calhoun of Delaware Valley Regional Financing Authority is here this evening to review the specifics. Lucian, please.
Good evening. The ordinance, as Jerry mentioned, authorizes the issuance of $140,000 par amount general obligation notes for the project that she discussed, the acquisition of equipment and paying the cost of issuance of the notes. The ordinance authorizes the acceptance of the loan commitment submitted by the Delaware Valley Regional Finance Authority to purchase the note for $140,000 and directs the payment of $1,060 origination fees incurred by the Delaware Valley Regional Finance Authority. It approves the form of the loan documents, principally the loan agreement, the notes, and the tax compliance agreement. It approves the amortization of principal that is set forth in the ordinance and the maximum interest rate of 15%. The 15% is the maximum rate because the township has the ability to request that the note be set at a variable rate. The Debt Act requires that the ordinance incorporate the maximum possible rate. As I understand from Mr. Gestrich and Larry, and the fixed rate as of close of business today was 1.69%. The ordinance also awards a qualified interest rate management agreement. That is the mechanism that Del Val utilizes to provide the fixed rate, and it authorizes entering that transaction to fix the rate, and the ordinance pledges the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the township to make repayments on the notes and the related qualified interest rate management agreement. It establishes a sinking fund as required by the Debt Act and appoints Wells Fargo Bank as the sinking fund depository. There is no additional cost to the township for the services of Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is one of Del Val's trustees. It authorizes filing the application for approval of the issuance of the notes to the Department of Community and Economic Development, and it authorizes advertisement of enactment if the board does enact the ordinance. And finally, it repeals any conflicting ordinances that have previously been enacted. Want a thumbnail?
Thank you,
One
Lucian.
comment, and Mr. Chairman, one comment. Our
Yes.
solicitor has reviewed and approved this ordinance.
Yes. Questions or comments from the board? Lucian or Jerry? No? Thank you very much, Lucian.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm then looking for a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance of non-electoral debt and award a qualified interest rate management agreement for non-electoral debt in the amount of $140,000.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2B under new business, discussion of authorization to proceed with dedication of the portion of Kriebel Mill Road within Chadwick Woods. Mr. Rice.
Okay. The staff, including Mr. Woodrow, Mr. Gestridge, and your Director of Public Works have been examining the steps that are necessary in order to accept for public dedication, public ownership, the existing road for the Chadwick Woods subdivision. This is a subdivision that was, I believe, approved probably 15 years ago, more or less.
97.
Okay. And essentially what has happened up to this point is the staff has looked at the road. I think the road is able to be accepted. It meets PennDOT's requirements for liquid fuels, which is always important. They have certain standards. And it's an issue now of just administratively determining who has any ownership interests in it. Mr. Woodrow has a legal description for the roadbed. It's a transfer of that real estate to the township, basically, like any transfer of real estate. So the township is going to have to get title insurance for that road in minimal amounts. We're going to have to make sure that there's no liens against it, and that involves getting information from the 9 property owners. Mr. Pryor, who I believe is the president of the HOA, and I believe he's here tonight, has been very helpful, sent me a list of the 9 residents with their addresses and contact information. The lots, I've been told, run to the edge of the road, not the middle of the road, so that eliminates a potential problem.
That is correct, yes.
We don't have to deal with anyone's lenders. You're not conveying any interest. The one question I have for, and not necessarily be answered tonight, but that subdivision, when it was recorded, that road was deeded, I assume, into the HOA. So I need to find that deed, whether it's on the record or whether the HOA has that information. They should try to get that to me or to Mr. Gestrick, because I want to see that that was actually done. When the lots were sold, the plan was recorded, that deed should have been deeded into the HOA. So I need that, and again, this is administrative work. It's going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to ask all 9 lot owners to sign off on this. You'll get a release from me, because you all have some rights in it as a private road. You need to sign those away. It'll take a little bit of time and a little bit of cost and expense, but I mean, if the board authorizes the staff to proceed with this tonight, we'll proceed with it. And what that will mean is that the township will now own the road. Township will be responsible to plow it and pave it and repair it and do anything else that they do for, township does for any of the other public roads. One thing that, Tim, that we didn't talk about is, I don't know if there's utilities in that road.
Yes, there are.
So we're going to need to make sure there's no issues with any of the, there shouldn't be. If the HOA has had any contact with the water and sewer providers or any of the utility providers, you know, I'd like to see that information too. But it's pretty straightforward. I mean, this is an established, usually this happens when the homes are first, well, not first built, when they're all built, then there's a dedication. But as long as the standards are met for, the PennDOT standards are met, then we'll just work through the paperwork that's got to be done. And what'll happen is there'll be an acceptance resolution that'll be back once we're ready to, you're ready to formally do this. Tonight, we're just looking for you to authorize the staff to, you know, spend the time and the effort to do this. There'll be an acceptance resolution that'll come back, and the board will formally accept the deed for the street at a public meeting. So that's the path, and then that gets recorded at the in Norristown, and we send that on to PennDOT. I believe PennDOT, John will come out and they'll walk the road with a wheel and measure the distance, right?
That's correct.
Typically. So that's the process. It'll take maybe next month. We'll be back with that resolution, assuming we get everything that we need to button this up. Once you vote and approve, go forward.
Would anyone from the HOA like to say anything? Mr. President?
Good evening. My name is Carlton Prime, the president of Chadwick Homewood Association. I'm here with 5 other homeowners. We are a 9-lot development that's been there for quite a few years, and to the best of my knowledge in regards to the title being entitled to the Chadwick Home Association, I have no recollection of that, no paperwork to show any of that. So if it has been done, it was never turned over to any of us for our safekeeping. We all want to thank you for considering this dedication of our road, and we thank you for your diligence.
Thank you, sir. Questions or comments from the board?
Sure.
I just had one comment. So, John, you mentioned that, you know, typically when a subdivision is complete, the developer will then go to the township and dedicate, you know, ask for the township to take over the dedication. Do we have any idea of what transpired that this never took place? Or, like, did the developer not finish pieces, other items of the development?
I have some information on that, Colleen. At the time, the Township Public Works Director was concerned about the logistics of getting from Lower Providence in through Worcester to get to this kind of remote section of highway. And so he was not interested in accepting dedication of the roadway. So there was a homeowners association that was formed and obligated with the perpetual maintenance of the road and infrastructure. I think, you know, hindsight being 20/20, you know, some 15 years later, long span, maybe it is time to reconsider that position. As taxpayers, those folks maybe deserve the same level of service as their other residents. And I think that's why the board may want to consider that position this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Tim, for digging that up. And included in our packet is the resolution way back from 2000. And it mentions one piece, that the piece of Creeple Mill Road that is actually in Worcester needed to be verified that our township would have access. I mean, Creeple Mill is a dedicated street to Worcester, as far as we know.
As far as we know, that is correct.
So there's no issue.
Should not be.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, is there a motion to authorize the staff to move forward with working towards dedicating the portion of Creeble Mill Road within Chadwick Woods?
I would make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the board? From the public? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Item 2C on the agenda, discussion and consideration of appointment of William Stanzak to fill the unexpired term on the Sewer Authority. Unfortunately, we have a vacancy on the Sewer Authority with the recent passing of Mr. Carl Buckenauer after many decades of service to our township. I'd like to recommend this evening that we appoint Mr. William Stanzak, who currently serves on our Finance Committee, which is an advisory board here in the township, and he can serve on both the Finance Committee and also on the Sewer Authority. He would bring his expertise in fiscal matters to his service on the Sewer Authority, and he would be a true asset as the liaison to the Sewer Authority. I know that we have several board members there who bring with them engineering backgrounds, and Mr. Stanzak's financial background would be an asset to that particular board. So I would recommend his appointment to the board. Questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve William Stanzak to fill the unexpired term on the Sewer Authority?
Make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2D, discussion and consideration of appointment of Joseph Pucci as an alternate to the Zoning Hearing Board. Mr. Gestrick.
Well, we have a request, actually came through the zoning hearing board for us to appoint Joseph Pucci, who I've had the opportunity to talk to, and he is interested in serving. I know that was a question at one point or another. We have one alternate already on the zoning hearing board. This would be the second alternate. Alternates are, interestingly enough, appointed for 3-year terms, we learned today, because I asked the question, because I thought it might be different from what a zoning hearing board member is appointed for. And the term is 3 years.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Do I hear a motion to appoint Mr. Joseph Pucci as an alternate to the Zoning Hearing Board for a term of 3 years?
I'll make that motion to appoint Mr. Pucci.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board? From the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2E on the agenda, discussion and consideration of supplemental budget appropriations from the Capital Projects Fund to fund infrastructure repairs. Ms. Golis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of the 5-year capital budget process, the Public Works Director identified certain infrastructure assets that would need repair or replacement during that period. And Mr. Primus will enlighten you a little on the process and what's going to be done after I finish speaking on the financial end of it. During that time, that budget process, we had originally earmarked about $18,400 in 2015 for gunite repairs of our stormwater pipes. Due to financing limitations, those 2015 projects were subsequently moved into 2016. So if you would pull any of your proposed 5-year capital budgets out, it would show a full $36,800 in 2016 for the gunite projects that we were anticipating having to secure financing for. As a result of an opinion from our solicitor recently regarding old developer in lieu of fees that we could use as unrestricted funds, we now have the ability to move those gun-iting projects up into 2015, both the original 2015 priorities as well as the 2016, 4 different locations for a total cost of $32,700. That would, if doing these in 2015, of course, would allow us to prevent additional damage needing more repair, as well as take advantage of pricing for the repairs in 2015 rather than increased expenses in 2016. So I have Mr. Primus here, and he's very anxious to talk about gun-iting to everyone tonight.
Excellent.
Thank you. During our yearly maintenance projects, we inspected our some of our stormwater pipes and inlets. And we identified 4 locations that the galvanized pipe is failing. One of the locations is Visitation Road. There's a 30-inch pipe, 50 feet long, which the bottom is all rotted out. Also at Pine Tree and Pinetown Road, there's this 36-inch pipe that's 85 foot long, which is failing. Featherbed Road, there's a 48-inch pipe that goes directly across the street that we have issues with. The bottom of the pipe is failing. That's a galvanized pipe also. And last is 688 Sunnyside Road. There's a 36-inch diameter pipe, 75 foot long, with galvanized pipe, which is failing also. The gunite process is a concrete type material, which is sprayed in the bed area to prolong the life of the pipe. Doing this would, it's a lot cheaper than the public works going out and tearing everything out and replacing it. That's about it.
And with this project, Mr. Primus, we won't have to dig into the road, you can do...
That's correct. The
Okay.
road will be open all the time. There won't be any issues.
Especially because 2 of those roads are
That's
being
correct.
repaved as, pretty much as...
That's
we speak.
correct.
And one other item, Mr. Chairman, the township solicitor did review these projects, and he has confirmed that they are considered public works maintenance and not subject to the normal bidding process of second-class township code.
Thank you. Questions from the board, comments?
I was just wondering, how much time does this buy us on these pipe? How permanent a repair is?
Probably our lifetime.
Good enough for me.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve supplemental budget appropriations from the Capital Projects Fund to fund the infrastructure repairs as identified by Ms. Golas and Mr. Primus.
Yeah, that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board? From the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And finally, item 2F on the agenda under new business, discussion and consideration of library renovations. Lynn is back with us tonight. Hi, Lynn. And we had an opportunity, I believe, now to look through the paperwork associated with the repairs and the improvements you had taken us through at the last meeting. Thank you for coming back tonight. Are there any questions or comments from the board now that we've seen that?
I think that we have to have a clarification. I had a resident, in between our meetings here, I had a resident approach me and say, is the township giving the library an extra $100,000, is what we talked about before, for these library improvements? And I told the resident, no, this is a part of your normal appropriations that you receive, on your own. So this is basically the library's funding. We're just basically giving you the okay to do the renovations in our building, which you take care of.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Okay, that clarification being made, is there a motion to approve the library renovations?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board? From the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3, announcements. Speaking of the library, the board there will meet on April 20th at 7 p.m. The Planning Commission will meet April 22nd at 7 p.m. and the Zoning Hearing Board the following evening, April 23rd at 7 p.m. Mr. Mrzinski, items on the Planning Commission and Zoning Hearing Board for this month, please, sir.
Thank you. The Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to hear a presentation. It's really an update. It's not any kind of decision from Audubon Square 5, that's Audubon Land Development, about their project, the progress that they've made in discussions with PennDOT, and I believe there's also some sewer concern that has been resolved. And so Brad Macy from Audubon Land is tentatively scheduled to come in and talk about that. And then the following night, the zoning hearing board have one hearing that's dealing with a potential new user of a property on Paulings Road at 1433 Paulings. It's it would be basically I believe it's technically a special exception hearing for this matter where we're changing from one non-conforming use to another.
Okay, and also with the planning commission, we sent the recreational overlay back as well.
Okay.
That should be on the agenda as well.
We will make sure that's on there.
Okay, thank you. The Business Development Committee will be hosting a business roundtable on April 29th. Mr. Roth is here this evening. Business owners, developers, and brokers that are interested in taking part in this informal discussion should contact Bill at broth@lowerprovidence.org, and we look forward to hearing interest from business owners. Comments and other business. Are there any comments from the board?
The Parks and Rec Committee met on Tuesday night. They began their process of doing their annual park tours where they go out to all the parks within the township. They tour the parks, look over all the apparatus, make sure they're safe, look for it with an eye to see what kind of improvements they can make to the parks. So they began their discussions as to what to include on their budgeting campaign. That was the primary focus of the meeting. Also, additionally, the Parks and Rec Board is looking for new student representatives for next year. So if any of the students in the township are interested in serving as a student rep to the Parks and Rec Board, they're accepting applications. Please contact Carl Lukens in the Park and Rec Department.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Comments from the staff? Manager?
No.
Solicitor?
Nothing.
Okay, courtesy of the floor. Questions or comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, I'll mention that our next business meeting will be held May 7th, 3 weeks from this evening, and at that I will call for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Have a good night.
Okay.
Half hour.